You are listening to the Empowering Working Moms podcast, Real Talk with Dr. Priyanka Nayak, a show to help professional moms in survival mode to take hold of their lives and thrive. If you're ready to take powerful action to create your best life, then this is the show for you. I'm your host, Dr. Priyanka Nayak, board-certified internal medicine physician and certified life coach. Now let's get to it and dive in. You are listening to the Empowering Working Moms podcast, episode number 13. Hello there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so happy to have you here to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is negative emotions. And I want to talk about negative emotions today because they're such a big part of our life in the sense that we have good emotions and bad emotions, right? And negative emotions come up all the time, all day, every day. But just understanding this and knowing how to deal with this will help us decrease our own suffering. Because ultimately, we are wired to be happy. We don't want to feel badly. Actually, we're taught at a young age that we're not supposed to feel sadness, anger, grief, frustration, and so on and so forth. Remember, though, that negative emotions, like stress, for example, do serve a purpose to protect us, to help us survive. Feeling stressed can help one perform on exams or, let's say, professional athletes at their sport. And yet, people feel so uncomfortable with these negative emotions. And this adds an extra layer to our suffering as humans. I actually remember I was at a funeral a couple of years ago, and people kept telling the wife and son of the person who had passed away to not cry and be strong. Let me be clear. Not crying and strength are not synonymous. They actually have no connection. You can definitely cry and be strong. Negative emotions, expression of negative emotions, are so stigmatized in society. We're told not to cry. We're taught we're not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to express our negative emotions. Maybe we're even taught we're not supposed to feel them. So, of course, that's why we buffer with negative coping strategies like overeating, over drinking, over Netflixing, and so on and so forth. In fact, we are programmed at a young age that we're supposed to be happy and live happily ever after, as exemplified by Disney movies. In my childhood in the 80s, I remember watching Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Little Mermaid, all these movies and seeing people, the main characters would fall in love and live happily ever after. And that's what we were taught. That's what life is supposed to be. Now, when you set people up with these kinds of expectations from a young age, of course, we feel that something has gone wrong every time we have issues or we don't feel happy. So you might be thinking, yeah, okay, I understand that, but what am I supposed to do about it? So as I said before, life is 50% good and 50% bad. That's just the math of it, right? So as beautiful as life is, it ebbs and flows. There are hardships. There are hard times. That's just part of the course. But realizing this, that life is not going to be all sunshine and roses and candy, even though it is beautiful, that yeah, there are going to be shitty times. But when it comes to bad times, remember that when you're going through something, you will have moments during the day. Like let's say you're crying much of the day when something tragic happens in your life. You will find moments where you laugh or you can smile or you can breathe or you can feel peace. The likelihood of feeling the negative feelings every single minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is extremely slim. So try and be mindful that you're feeling many emotions at any given time and throughout the course of a day. So just allowing ourselves to be human, I think that's important to think about. Being human, being imperfect, the human experience, and many of us, we all have different backgrounds and childhoods that have programmed us to think in a certain way. Many of us, type A female professionals, we're perfectionists and we're super hard on ourselves. So realizing that we need to dial it down a notch, as hard as that is, and giving ourselves compassion like we do our friends and family. Giving ourselves compassion and space to just be human, to cry sometimes and know it's not a sign of weakness, to feel the negative emotion and allow space for it. Because if we shut down our feelings completely, we're not going to make any progress in our personal development, in our personal growth, in our lives. We're not going to be able to move forward. I want to give an example of something I try and teach my children. My baby's only 1, but my son is 4, and he will express sadness over, any given issue, and I will explain to him that these are all normal feelings, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to express his emotions. It's okay to feel that way, because once we feel that way, we can move on. It's suppressing emotions that are the most destructive, because then it's just we internalize all of it, and that has its own voodoo that happens when you're holding on to negativity inside of you. So remember, our resistance to negative emotions gives us an extra layer of grief on top of the actual feeling. So accepting our negative emotions, and more than even accepting, the first step is really getting acquainted with them and noticing them. They're just vibrations in our body. We can feel where they are, characterize and qualify them, sit with them, and notice them. So once we can actually notice, we get some distance from them. We can practice mindfulness. The more we familiarize ourselves with them, we empower ourselves. We neutralize them. Now remember that you have the power within you. You are a professional mother. You can do hard things. And I'm bringing this up because so many times there are all these things in our lives that we cannot control. And yet, if we hone in on our own power, take action, it's amazing what we can do, the results we can get. The power is within us. And that's actually why the name of this podcast is Empowering Working Moms, because each and every one of you has power inside of you, whether you know it or not. And the work I do with my clients is helping them to see that power, to tap into it, to take control of their lives when things get really hard, when they're suffering, to get them to peace, freedom, and happiness. So we empower ourselves, we neutralize our feelings by noticing them. And the more we notice, the more familiar we get with them. So we don't have to treat the negative feelings as an enemy, but maybe more as a frenemy. And acknowledging that we are not our emotions. So when we feel angry, right? We are not angry. We feel that way. Not all of us is angry. A part of us feels angry. So we don't have to indulge in the all-consumingness of negative emotions. We can decide to not have shame about them, and we can destigmatize them. We don't have to feel bad about feeling bad. In my own life, when I've needed to grieve, I might call a friend, a listening ear, I might play a song that helps me to cry. That is super cathartic, and I feel better. One time, I was beside myself in grief, crying, and while I was crying, I reminded myself that it was okay. The feeling would pass. And afterwards, after all that crying, I noticed that I only cried for probably 6 or 7 minutes, but that felt like an eternity. It really wasn't that long at all. I tell you this because I want you to be aware of what your brain does, how it will skew your perception of time or the time that you spent crying or having negative energy. It's probably less than you thought. But because our brain tends to focus on the negative just by nature, that's just how humans are, probably as a protective mechanism. But because we do that, we amplify the negative emotions in our heads when maybe objectively we're not as miserable as we think. So take some time to think about that one. Here are some tips that are helpful when you feel bad. Believing that you can handle whatever crisis comes your way. Look to the past. Think of issues that you've handled with strength and grace you probably don't even realize. Know that you have felt anger, sadness, grief, fear, frustration, and all kinds of other negative emotions in the past, right? It was temporary and it passed, and you're still here. So while you're actually feeling the negative emotion, try and keep this in mind. Remember the temporariness of it, because remember, in life, the only constant is change. Feel the negative emotion. Know that it won't harm you per se, right? It's not actually going to kill you. Know you're resilient. You felt bad feelings before, so many instances in your life. You have survived and you've gone on to thrive and do great things. When we allow ourselves to feel the negative emotion, we can move forward without unhealthfully buffering. Examples: overeating, over Netflixing, and any other harmful behavior. So not wanting to feel a certain way isn't really helpful. But what is helpful is allowing ourselves the space, the grace to feel it all. That's the hard work. And that is where the magic is. Being at peace with all of the feelings, good and bad, are a key component of our best life. Your best life isn't the one where you never feel sad. It's the one that aligns with your values, that is filled with self-love, where you feel it all. I want to give you more actionable tips, okay? So when you hear a negative narrative or negative thoughts, you're having negative feelings, I want you to do 3 steps: notice, neutralize, and new. So notice is what I talked about before. You notice it, where it is in your body, how it feels. Just observe. You become an observer of your own thoughts and feelings. Neutralize. So neutralizing is when you become the observer and you're no longer engaging and getting sucked into whatever negative thoughts and feelings that perhaps aren't serving you. And then the next step is new. So creating a new thought, a new emotion, or a new action step, doing something new and moving forward. Lastly, I want to talk about a different category of negative emotions. So when something major happens, or there's a major crisis in your life, I'm talking about more catastrophic events, i.e., someone you care for has been in an accident, or maybe something happened to your child, someone died. These are more extreme circumstances. So my above methods may not work. Here's what to do instead. For me, massive action makes me feel powerful. So when there is a crisis, I go into massive action mode and I feel empowered. I feel powerful. That is what I can control in a situation where I have no control outside of me. It also allows me to be distracted from whatever emotions I might not want to feel at that given moment. But let me be clear, even if I don't want to feel the emotion in that moment, I'm buffering with massive action, I will allow myself to feel the emotion later. So, of course, taking action is a way of buffering an emotion, but it's a healthy buffering method because sometimes we need time before we're ready to sit with certain emotions and process. For me, action works. For you, it might be another healthy buffering coping mechanism that keeps your brain able to deal with what's going on. Life has ups and downs, as we all know. And as much as we want to be happy, we can certainly embrace that when bad things happen, nothing has gone wrong. This is how it was supposed to be, whatever that might mean. We won't know till we're past it and in the future. But right now, we are moving through it. Life presents grief in various forms, and accepting that fact makes it a little bit easier. So if you're feeling stuck, are a professional mom with a seemingly perfect life, but you're silently suffering on the inside, in survival mode, you've tried self-help, self-care, therapy, spinning on your Peloton, and feel like this isn't helping you to get to where you want to be, and peace, freedom, confidence seem unattainable, book a call to chat with me to realize that it's not. That thriving is possible for you, even if it seems like it's not right now. www.priankanaikmdcoaching.as.me. That's Priyanka Nayak, mdcoaching.as.me. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Empowering Working Moms podcast, Real Talk with Dr. Priyanka Nayak. If you are ready to get unstuck and out of survival mode to live your best life, I want to invite you to book a free 30-minute consultation call with me. To get started, visit priyankanayakmdcoaching.as.me. Link in the show notes.